Welcome to this deep dive. We're going to tackle Ponzi schemes today.
Mm-hmm.
Using insights from FinCrime intelligence, we'll break down what they are, how they work, those crucial red flags, and look at some big real-world cases.
Yeah. And it's so important, isn't it? Understanding this stuff isn't just for finance pros, it's really for everyone.
Absolutely.
Knowing about financial fraud helps you stay informed and, well, protect yourself financially.
Definitely. And the core idea of a Ponzi scheme, it sounds almost simple, but the damage is huge.
It is.
It's all about paying early investors with money from new ones, not from actual profits. It just looks profitable.
That's the illusion, precisely. And that's what we want to unpack today.
Right.
Give you the tools, the knowledge to understand how they work, spot the signs, maybe learn from past examples so you can avoid them.
Okay, let's jump in. How do these schemes actually function day to day? What keeps them going, at least for a while?
Well, like we said, that core mechanism is just recycling money. New funds come in, they go straight out to pay the promised returns to earlier investors.
So there's no real business underneath it all, no actual investment generating wealth.
Nope. It's purely redistribution. Think of it like, well, juggling. You need more and more balls coming in to keep the ones already in the air from falling.
That makes sense. So it hinges entirely on recruiting new people, bringing in fresh cash.
Exactly. It's completely dependent on that continuous flow. And to keep it going, the operators, they get really good at building fake confidence.
How do they do that?
Oh, things like fake account statements showing amazing returns, reports that look official but are just made up. Or they create this sense of exclusivity, like this is a special opportunity only for a select few, get in now. Plays on that fear of missing out.
Yeah, that FOMO is powerful, but obviously it can't last forever. What usually makes it all fall apart?
It inevitably collapses. Usually happens when the new investment starts to slow down. They just can't bring in enough cash to cover the payouts they've promised.
Or maybe people try to pull their money out.
That too. If a lot of investors ask for their money back at once, especially larger amounts, the whole thing implodes because the money simply isn't there. It was never really generated.
Okay, that paints a clear picture of the mechanics. Now, thinking about someone getting pitched an investment, what are those key warning signs, the red flags we need to look out for?
One of the biggest ones, probably the biggest, is the promise of unusually high returns that are also incredibly consistent.
Regardless of what the market's doing.
Exactly. Real investments go up and down, right? If something claims steady, high profits month after month, year after year, especially when markets are volatile, that's suspicious.
Too good to be true, basically.
Pretty much. Another huge one is a lack of transparency.
What do you mean by that?
Like, if you can't get clear answers about how your money is being invested, what's the actual strategy? Where are the assets held?
They're vague or secretive about it?
Or they pressure you to just roll over your profits, reinvest instead of taking the cash out.
Keeping the money in their system.
Right. And related to that, if you do try to withdraw your money and you face difficulties, delays, excuses, that's a classic sign the scheme is under stress.
Definitely sounds like a major warning bell. What else?
Check for registration. Are the investments registered? Are the people selling them licensed or regulated?
So doing that basic check with regulatory bodies.
Yes. Operating outside of regulatory oversight is a huge advantage for fraudsters. Also, be wary of business models that are just overly complex or deliberately opaque.
If you can't understand how it makes money, maybe it doesn't.
That's a good rule of thumb. And don't underestimate the social element. FinCrime intelligence points out how often these rely on personal networks.
Using trust within a community or group.
Exactly. Charismatic leaders often exploit existing relationships to gain credibility and recruit new victims. It shows you can't rely only on whether you trust the person introducing it.
Yeah, it's quite sobering. Okay, let's make this more concrete. FinCrime intelligence mentions some major cases. Bernie Madoff is probably the most famous.
Infamous, yeah. Madoff's scheme was just staggering. Around $65 billion in estimated losses.
And it ran for decades.
Decades.
Yeah.
And the victims were incredibly varied. Big institutions, charities, ordinary individuals all over the world. It really shows the reach these things can have.
Then there was Alan Stanford. His was different, wasn't it? Something about CDs.
Yeah, Stanford used certificates of deposit, CDs, supposedly issued by his bank in Antigua. He promised really high, safe returns.
But they were fake.
Completely fictitious. The bank, the returns, all of it. About $7 billion lost there. Yeah. It shows how they can use familiar-sounding products to seem legitimate.
And more recently, these schemes have moved into crypto too, right? Like BitConnect.
Absolutely. BitConnect was a big one in the crypto space, promised massive returns through a supposed lending program and trading bot.
But again, no real activity behind it.
None that could justify the returns. It was just new crypto investors' money paying earlier ones. Classic Ponzi, just dressed up in new tech jargon.
Wow. So traditional finance, offshore banks, crypto,
Mm.
they adapt.
They definitely do.
So what happens legally when these schemes are uncovered? What are the consequences for the operators?
Well, running a Ponzi scheme is a serious crime. You're looking at charges like securities fraud, wire fraud, maybe mail fraud, financial misrepresentation.
Serious charges.
Very. Penalties often include long prison sentences. Think Madoff getting 150 years. Plus, regulators will seize assets to try and repay victims, though often only pennies on the dollar are recovered.
And they get banned from the industry.
Oh, yeah. Regulatory bodies impose hefty fines and lifetime bans from working in finance. Plus, victims can bring civil lawsuits, too.
Who are the main regulators involved in policing this?
In the U.S., it's primarily the Securities and Exchange Commission, the SEC. The Department of Justice prosecutes the criminal cases. In the U.K., you have the Financial Conduct Authority, the FCA. Across Europe, ESMA helps coordinate.
Okay, so there are watchdogs. Now, FinCrime intelligence also talks about the role of banks and other financial institutions. How do they fit in? Sometimes they unintentionally help.
Right. Yeah, unintentionally is the key word usually. The operators need banks to move the money around, don't they? To receive investments, to make those payout payments.
So the money flows through legitimate channels.
It has to initially. This is where anti-money laundering, AML programs come in.
Right, AML. So what are the AML teams inside banks looking for? What triggers suspicion?
They're looking for unusual patterns. Things like lots of incoming payments, often in similar amounts, followed quickly by outgoing payments to different people.
Like the money isn't staying put.
Exactly. Or a new company account that suddenly gets tons of investor deposits but has no obvious business activity to explain it.
Yep.
Repetitive transactions that look like scheduled payout cycles can be a flag. Also, firms acting like investment managers, gathering lots of money from the public, but they aren't registered or licensed to do so.
And if a bank spots these red flags, what are they supposed to do?
They have a legal duty to investigate, and if suspicion remains, file a suspicious activity report, or SAR, with the authorities like FinCEN in the U.S.
So SARs are a key tool for law enforcement.
A very important one. They can provide crucial intelligence to investigators looking into potential Ponzi schemes or other financial crimes.
Okay, so we have regulators, we have financial institutions with AML duties,
Yeah,
but ultimately a lot rests on individual investors being careful.
absolutely. Investor awareness is probably the single best defense.
So what's the key advice? How can people protect themselves?
First and foremost, be skeptical, especially of anything promising guaranteed high returns with little or no risk.
That old saying, if
Ah,
it sounds too good to be true.
it almost certainly is. Don't fall for high-pressure sales tactics or claims of exclusivity that rush you into deciding.
Take your time, do your homework.
Exactly. Do your due diligence. Verify everything. Check if the investment and the seller are registered with regulators like the SEC or FCA.
Use their databases.
Yes, they often have online tools for this. And insist on understanding how the returns are generated. If you don't get a clear, believable explanation, walk away.
Don't invest in something you don't understand.
Never. And asked about custody. Who is actually holding your money or assets? Is it a reputable, independent, third-party custodian? Or is it all controlled by the company selling the investment?
That separation is important.
Crucial. It adds a layer of protection.
This has been really, really helpful. So to wrap things up, what are the main points you'd want listeners to take away from our deep dive today?
I think the core things are Ponzi schemes are frauds that pay old investors with new investors' money, not real profits.
Right. The basic deception.
Second, there are clear red flags, those unrealistic returns, lack of transparency, difficulty getting your money out, unregistered sellers. Be alert to those.
Mm-hmm.
And third, these aren't history. We've seen massive, devastating examples recently, even in new areas like crypto. They adapt, so vigilance is key.
So stay informed, ask those tough questions,
Mhm.
trust your instincts if something feels off. Don't let the promise of easy money override common sense.
That sums it up perfectly. And maybe a final thought to leave people with.
Go for it.
Considering how adaptable these schemes are, like we saw with BitConnect moving into crypto, what might be the next evolution? As finance keeps changing with AI, DeFi, whatever comes next, What new disguises might Ponzi schemes wear?
That's a good question.
And what kind of ongoing learning and critical thinking do we all need to practice to spot them in the future?
That's definitely something to think about.
Mhm.
Constant vigilance seems to be the message.
It really is.